And another thing that is interesting to know more about is the political debate around indigenization for mining.
Yes, indigenization process, the indigenization for mining, this has created a lot of apprehension when it comes to investor confidence in the country. But, you know, one thing I would like to say is that the indigenization is a process, not an event. It's a process that is supposed to take place over 5 years. The bill or the act itself is still subject to some debate. Recently we have heard the Parliamentary Legal Committee saying that this bill is ultra vires to some of the earlier provisions of the act. So, you know, that actually means that the bill itself is still subject to several debates. And like I said earlier, it's a process, not an event. When I say that, we're saying that over the next 5 years, that indigenization process will take place. Now, recently, we know that ESA, the Indian steel giant, has come in and invested close to 600 million in Zimbabwe. And President Mugabe himself has said, listen, as long as you come in to invest and not exploit, we are not rigid on the 51%. ESA has invested and they're holding 60% of the assets. And it's on record as having been said by the president. And so the indigenization bill as it stands, though it's making investors a bit wary, you know, if you come to the reality of the situation, people shouldn't be that wary. The other thing also, which I mentioned earlier, is that the assets are very cheap. You come in there and you're buying assets at next to nothing. Even if you give an indigenous person 51% free carry, it's still very cheap assets. I can compare some of the mines that we are looking at with African Minerals in Zimbabwe, mines that are costing 1 million, 2 million. In South Africa, our next door neighbor, those mines will not cost you less than 10 to 15 million.
So you think that this indigenization for mining, that will be written in law, or do you think that that decision will be taken after the election? Or?
I think there's a lot of debate going on. Okay, there's a lot of debate going on that, on the indigenization law itself. We know at the same time that there's a lot of politicking going on. There's a lot of campaigning for the elections. And what I'm saying is, although the law is being talked about, we don't know whether in fact it will be implemented. What I'm also saying is that even if it's going to be implemented, okay, it's going to be implemented in such a way that it's done in phases, okay? And some of these phases might include, you know, indigenization in the form of corporate social responsibility. And the other thing that I'm saying is that, look, even if it were to become law today, the assets that you are getting are next to nothing. You're getting very, very cheap assets. And in any case, if it became law, we ourselves at African Minerals are in the process of putting in place our own indigenization or indigenous compliant structure. So we don't think that that should affect African Minerals or Africa investors' thrust into investing in Zimbabwe.
You mentioned corporate social responsibility. What do you expect African Minerals' policy of distribute 5% of net profit to the local community?
That's a very positive thing or policy to have, because, you know, Zimbabwe is a developing country. If you are mining in areas that are very underdeveloped in some of the areas that will be mining. So if you have social corporate responsibility, especially given the fact that we've come out of a hyperinflation era where, you know, people have suffered due to, you know, to lack of money. Corporate social responsibility is a must. And I'm happy that, in fact, AI or Africa Minerals has put this as one of the policies, because that will go a long way towards alleviating poverty in the country. It will go a long way towards, you know, AI's acceptability in the country. It will go a long way towards, in fact, you know, helping Africa Minerals or Africa Invest achieve their long-term goals in terms of getting their return on investment in the country.
Where do you see the largest need of this kind of support?
Well, I can, you know, the sky is the limit for in terms of need. You know, being a medical doctor, of course, I will talk mostly, I see glaringly the need for supporting the health sector. You know, our health, public health sector is struggling. We have lots of primary clinics in the rural areas that are not manned at all, that don't have any medicines, that don't have equipment. You know, post-independence, Zimbabwe made huge strides in providing health care to the rest of the population. They had primary, it was one of the best, in fact, in the country. The programs were some of the best in the country in terms of primary health outreach to the people. But, you know, all that has suffered because of the hyperinflation and the economic meltdown. So I see a lot of benefit, you know, in terms of health provision, primary health care, you know, setups, as well as schools, of course. It's, you know, education. You know, Zimbabwe has had one of the highest, education programs in Africa, and some of that is suffered, has taken a big hit because of economic meltdown. So if one of the programs in social corporate responsibility is helping schools, simple things in the schools, providing books in the schools, maybe 1 or 2 computers, you know, will go a long way towards growth and help or benefiting the general populace, which is underprivileged.
So finally, what is your view on the future of Africa Minerals activities in Zimbabwe?
I think very bright. I think very bright. I like the team. I like their thrust. I like their energy. I like their confidence in the country. I like the way they've come in here and looked at what is happening in the country and made a decision. You know that, no, let's prioritize Zimbabwe. They are seeing opportunities. The team sees opportunities, and they've decided to grab the bull by its horns and move in. So I think that the fact that Africa Minerals has jumped in at the right time would definitely benefit the investor. Because in terms of growth and return on investment, the sky is the limit.
That was my last question, but finally, do you have something to say that you want to address to the financiers?
I would like to say to the financiers, look, you know, political risk is everywhere. Political risk in Zimbabwe is a perception that is created by the media. Come here for yourselves, see what is happening in this country, see how peaceful this country is, see how the level of crime is so low. Drive around, walk around at night time, and you see people walking freely, black and white, you know, and I think the time, if you haven't invested in Zimbabwe, you know, already, you know, then what are you doing? You should be looking at investing in a country such as this one. It has the infrastructure, it has the right people, it has the human capital, it has the opportunities, abundance of mineral resources. So what are you waiting for? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Mike.